1. She asks about your life. Before her, the first signal is a question pattern, and it's easy to dismiss as ordinary curiosity. She starts asking about your past, not surface questions about your job, deeper ones: what you were like when you were younger, where you grew up, what you wanted to be, the turns your life took, what you learned from things that didn't work out. Most men interpret this as polite conversation. It isn't. Here's the psychology. When a woman is interested in a man romantically, she begins constructing a complete picture of him. Not the version he presents socially, the actual person, including the decades she wasn't there for. Curiosity about someone's past is one of the most consistent markers of romantic rather than casual interest. Because casual interest doesn't require history, you don't need to know what someone was like at 25 in order to have a pleasant conversation with them at 60. She's doing something specific with that history. She's checking for continuity. Does his story hold together? Does he take responsibility for his own turns? Or is everything someone else's fault? Has he grown? Or has he been the same person making the same mistakes for 40 years? And with older men specifically, she's checking something else. She's checking whether he's still carrying his last relationship. Pay attention to how she asks about your marriage or your divorce. That question is almost never idle. She's listening for tone more than content. If you describe it with heat, with blame, with a need for her to agree that you were wronged, she's learning that you're not finished with your last chapter. If you describe it calmly, with some ownership, without needing her sympathy, she's learning that you're actually available. How to read it? Ordinary politeness asks what you do. Interest asks who you've been. If she's excavating rather than skimming, and if she remembers what you told her weeks later, that's not conversation. That's someone building a picture she intends to keep. 2. She softens her physical presentation around you. The second signal is physical, and it happens in ways she doesn't consciously plan. When a woman is attracted to a man, her body presentation shifts, not dramatically, but consistently. Her posture opens, arms uncross, shoulders come back rather than curling forward. The chest and throat are left exposed instead of shielded. Her head tilts slightly when you speak, which exposes the side of the neck. That neck exposure is worth understanding. The throat is a vulnerable area, and covering it is an ancient protective reflex. When someone leaves their throat open toward another person, their nervous system has classified that person as non-threatening. It's not a decision, it's a state. Her voice usually changes too. It tends to soften and drop slightly, becoming warmer and a little slower than her normal speaking voice. This is autonomic. When the nervous system shifts toward connection rather than alertness, the muscles around the vocal cords relax and the sound changes. She has no idea it's happening. Her movements slow down. Attraction, oddly, tends to produce more deliberate movement rather than faster movement, because the state involved is one of engagement rather than urgency. Why this shows up more clearly around older men? All of this depends on her guard being down. If any part of her nervous system is on alert, these responses stay suppressed. She stays composed and contained, and you see nothing. An older man who's genuinely calm, who isn't pursuing hard, who doesn't seem to want something, gets classified as safe very quickly. And once that classification happens, the guard drops and everything underneath becomes visible. So a woman may display more of these signals around a calm 60-year-old than around a 30-year-old she also finds attractive, simply because the 30-year-old's hunger keeps her defenses partially engaged. How to read it? Compare her to herself. Watch how she holds herself with other people, then watch her with you. The shift is the signal. not the posture in isolation. 3. She positions you as someone who knows things. Here's number 3. This is the one built specifically for older men, and it's the one that gets missed constantly. She starts asking your opinion, not on small talk topics, on things that actually matter to her. A decision she's weighing, a problem with her work, something in her family, a choice she has to make. She brings you real material and asks what you think. Almost every older man reads this wrong. He assumes she sees him as a mentor, a father figure, someone safe and ansual whose wisdom she values. That reading is usually backwards. Here's the actual psychology. Consulting someone on a matter of consequence is an act of positioning. She is placing you in a role that has weight. She is treating your judgment as valuable, which means she's treating you as valuable. There are 3 things happening simultaneously. First, she's creating a reason for continued contact. A question requires an answer, which requires a conversation, which requires another meeting. Advice seeking is one of the most socially acceptable ways to generate ongoing interaction without declaring anything. Second, she's testing your character. How you handle her problem tells her enormous amounts about you. Do you listen or immediately fix? Do you make it about your own experience or stay with hers? Do you talk down to her? Do you respect her intelligence? A woman learns more about a man from how he handles her problem than from 100 casual conversations. Third, and this is the part men miss, she's giving you an opening. She has handed you material she cares about and invited you into it. That's an invitation to depth. And depth is the doorway to everything else. Why? This signal belongs to older men specifically. She won't do this with a younger man generally because she doesn't credit his judgment yet. Consulting an older man is available to her in a way that consulting a peer isn't. It's a socially safe way to build closeness without exposing romantic interest, and it plays directly to what she perceives as his strength. Here's the critical part, and this is where men lose it. If you respond to this as a mentor, you will become a mentor permanently. If you lecture, advise from above, treat her like a student, or lean into the wise elder role, you will lock yourself into a position that has no romantic exit. The frame will harden, and you'll never get out of it. The correct response is to engage as an equal. Listen more than you advise. Ask what she thinks before you offer what you think. Be interested in her reasoning, not just her problem. Give a real opinion when asked, but as a peer offering a perspective, not an authority issuing a ruling. Handle it that way, and the advice seeking becomes exactly what she intended it to be, a bridge into real closeness. Handle it wrong, and you become her uncle. 4. She makes herself available without asking you for anything. The 4th signal is about how she manages the logistics of seeing you. When a woman is interested, she begins engineering opportunities for contact. But she does it in ways that never require her to ask directly. She mentions where she'll be casually, not an invitation, just information. I usually go to that place on Thursday mornings. She's handing you a location and a time and waiting to see what you do with it. She mentions things she'd like to do but hasn't. A restaurant she's been curious about. A place she's never been. An event coming up again. Not an invitation. A door left open. She becomes noticeably flexible about her schedule around you. She's available when you suggest something. Things that would have been complicated become simple. And she's around more. She shows up where you are more often than random chance explains. The psychology here is about risk management. Direct invitation carries rejection risk. Mentioning a place, a time, an interest carries none. Because if you don't pick it up, nothing has been offered and nothing has been declined. She can retreat with her dignity untouched. Why older men miss this constantly? Men over 50 tend to be looking for clarity. Decades of adult life have trained them to expect direct communication. So when a woman says, "I've always wanted to see that exhibit," a man in this age bracket often hears a piece of trivia rather than a door. It is a door, almost always. How to read it. Ask whether she's giving you actionable information. Places, times, interests, availability, information you could act on if you chose to. Women don't hand men their schedules and their unfulfilled wishes at random. And here's the response that matters. When she mentions something she'd like to do, the correct move is not to agree that it sounds nice. It's to make it concrete. "Let's go. Are you free Saturday?" That's it. That's the whole thing. She built the ramp, you just have to drive up it. 5. Her attention stays with you. The last one is the most reliable of all, and it's the one that can't be faked. When a woman is genuinely interested, her attention locks onto you and doesn't drift. She's not looking at her phone. She's not scanning the room. She's not waiting for you to finish so she can talk. She's completely present, and she stays that way across the entire interaction. The downstream evidence is what makes it verifiable. She remembers things you mentioned in passing and brings them up weeks later. She asks follow-up questions that prove she was tracking. Details from your conversations stay with her. Here's why this is the strongest signal available. Attention cannot be manufactured for long. A smile can be forced. Proximity can be arranged, even disclosure can be strategic. But sustained, undivided attention flows automatically toward whatever the brain has flagged as important. It goes where interest already is, and it can't be redirected by willpower for any real length of time. Politeness lives in words. Interest lives in attention. How to test it? Watch what happens when something competes. Her phone buzzes. Someone walks past. There's a noise across the room. Does she break away and stay away? Or does she come right back to you? The woman who keeps returning to you is telling you where her focus wants to be before we finish. The part that prevents mistakes. None of these signals means anything on its own. Some people are naturally warm. Some are naturally curious. Some ask everyone for advice. One signal proves nothing. What matters is the cluster. Multiple signals appearing together and continuing to appear across repeated interactions. When you see her asking about your past and softening physically and consulting you on real matters and leaving doors open about her schedule and giving you undivided attention, that's a pattern. Patterns are trustworthy. Single moments aren't. And use the right comparison. Not her against other women, her against herself. Is she different with you than with other people in the room? Is she different with you now than 3 weeks ago? That's where the actual information lives. Here's the thing that determines whether any of this helps you. Reading the signals is half the skill. Responding is the other half. And it's the half men over 50 fail at most often. The failure pattern is predictable. A man correctly reads the signals, he recognizes the interest, and then he does nothing because he's waiting for certainty. He wants her to make it unmistakable. He wants the risk removed before he acts. That certainty never arrives. That's not how this works. The signals are designed to give you enough to act on, not enough to be guaranteed. She is deliberately holding back the last percentage because closing that gap is your part. And here's what she's actually doing while she waits. She's watching to see if you have the perception to notice and the nerve to move. That's the test. A man who reads every signal perfectly and then does nothing fails it exactly as completely as a man who noticed nothing. So when the pattern is there, act on it. Make it concrete. Ask her to dinner. Name a day. Turn her open door into an actual plan. You don't need to be smooth. You need to be clear. And you need to be willing to move on incomplete information. That combination, perception plus nerve, is rarer than you'd think. And it's the whole difference between the men this works for and the men it doesn't. 5 signals. She asks about your life before her and listens to how you talk about your past. She softens physically because her guard is down around you. She positions you as someone whose judgment matters, which is number 3, and it's an invitation to depth, not a promotion to mentor. She makes herself available without ever asking directly, and her attention stays with you when other things compete for it. Read them as a cluster across time, comparing her to herself, and then respond. Because the signal is only half of what's happening. The other half is her finding out whether you were paying attention and whether you'd do anything about it. If this was useful, hit like and subscribe. And in the comments, tell me honestly, how many times have you gotten number 3 and read it as her seeing you as a father figure? Be honest, most men have. I'll see you in the next one.